Welcome to Virtual Beer Podcast. Grab an online drink with fellow creatives. VirtualBeerPodcast.com.
This is the show where I get white girl drunk and can barely form a sentence, but I always have really great guests, and it's better if they get to talk more. My today's guest is somebody I wanted to talk to for a very long time. Her name is Chelsea London. She is a street photographer based in Prague. And if you're a photographer yourself and you're just getting started with a 52 weeks photography challenge, chances are you're getting started with her challenge. Chelsea's work has been featured in different media outlets, including the Czech National Television. She also does photography workshops, and she is very active in the photography community on the internet. Chelsea, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Jan. I'm happy to be here, finally.
Well, I mean, you had like more important things to do. Last time
I wouldn't have been able to get white girl drunk with you, so this is better. Anyway.
How long have you been doing the 52 weeks challenge?
This is my third year. The first year was more like I just kind of posted about it on Instagram, and I wasn't very consistent with it. So I got some feedback from people who were actually participating, and they were like, well, I really enjoyed it, but, we didn't have that consistent medium going the whole time. So the last year I totally rewrote it, and so now you can do it on Instagram, Reddit, Flickr, Facebook. People email me if they don't like social media.
Wow.
And I added Discord this year, which is a huge, awesome addition.
Like, do you have your own Discord, or are you like...
Yeah, I have a Discord server specifically for this. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's
That's
great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And what made you start organizing such a thing in the first place?
Well, it's kind of, my photography history is a little strange because my parents are both photographers. So I kind of grew up thinking it was normal and it wasn't like a hobby, it was just something people did. And I kind of got away from that when I was a little bit older. After I got married and things, I had to sell all my gear because rent in New York is very expensive. My husband was insanely supportive, and he went out and surprised me and bought me a new camera and stuff and said, you should just start doing it again. It's been years. So to get back into it, I started a 365-day project by myself. And it was a self-portrait project because I wanted to get better at portraits. And I forced myself to take, edit, and post a picture every single day for 365 days of my own face. It was horrible. I would not recommend it.
It sounds very intense. Like I never thought that I personally could do like a 365 project, because it's just a lot of work. Something smaller, like I've been seeing people doing like 90-day projects and stuff. That's like more manageable, I guess. And you can just pick a quarter of a year where you usually have less work.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the thought with the 52 week, because I thought it actually helped a lot, because right after I finished it, actually before I even finished it, my husband and I left the city and New York, and we started traveling full time around Europe. And I finished it like 3 weeks into our trip. I say trip, but we did it for 3 years. Yeah, a trip, we say. But, it did help me to hone all these skills before we left and like remember things that I used to know how to do, and which made, going into the trip a lot easier to deal with. And I felt more confident in my skills, and obviously they continued to progress and so on. But it was the push I needed, but it was also so mentally draining that I would never... I really am like very cautious about recommending it to people. I usually say, don't do that. Especially not with your own face, because that's terrible.
We'll get back to the photo challenges, but first, the show usually starts with a question: what are we drinking and why? So, what are we drinking?
Well, according to my glass, we're drinking Zoiber, but I am not. That's a Polish beer. I am drinking Braník, which is the cheapest Prague beer. It costs roughly 5 American cents. But I like it, and it's very inexpensive, so you can get white girl drunk, as you said, for very little money.
Okay. I'll be very seasonal. I'm having a spiced apple wine.
Wow, someone's fancy.
There's a really good cider place in Rotterdam. They make their own, but they also import a lot. And they had a Black Friday sale. And that was the only Black Friday sale that I cared about. They also closed their like brick and mortar store, and you have to go to their like cellar somewhere in the outskirts of the city. So yeah, I'm having a spiced apple wine from Latvia, believe it or not.
Look at that.
Latvia has really good cider.
Interesting. I love cider, so I'm all about trying that.
And what are we cheersing to?
How about
to the new year?
Yeah, we're off to a good start.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been great, really.
No, so let's cheers to maybe it getting better.
There's like 12 months, 11 and a half months to go.
Yeah, so, optimism is important.
Yeah, optimism.
To optimism.
So after all the projects and challenges and stuff, how would you describe your photography style to people who don't know it?
I focus, like you said, mostly on street. I call it documentary travel because sometimes I'll throw in those postcard images that we love so much. But I focus a lot on composition and color. I think most people would associate strong color theory with my photos, I say. But I think, I think that's one of the things that makes my images look like my images. I also come from a film and television production background. So I use a lot of the techniques and skills I learned then in my photography. So you'll often see like a big shoulder in the foreground out of focus or lots of layering and things like that, which I do on purpose to make it more immersive. So it feels like you're there.
Yeah, I think foreground is something that people usually don't think about. Like you will never forget about the middle ground or the background of your photo, but like people just overlook foreground, and then in the end, everybody ends up with photos looking too flat. Like I don't know. I like putting people in plants or sticking stuff in front of my lens. It's also like cool that you've mentioned color, like strong colors and color theory in the context of like street photography, because I think for many beginner photographers, street photography is something, black and white and very grungy and very like grainy and stuff. And I think it's great that we have like so many street photographers who really like work with color. You're in that group, of course, but then who's big and does it? 6 Street Under.
Yeah, and Josh Jack as well. Yeah, those two I think stand out for color and street for sure as contemporary street photographers.
Do you have any photography project that you're particularly proud of?
Proud of is hard. I did one project that got a lot of media coverage, but I wouldn't say that it's like my magnum opus or anything. But I did work on the selfies across Europe from 2016, and then it kind of just petered off when I decided I was over it. I think I tend to focus more on small term projects as opposed to the sweeping ones. So, I have maybe this one photo story that was pretty important to me, which was my actual giving birth that happened in May. So I covered that from labor until the actual delivery. And that was exceedingly challenging and not at all what I anticipated and hoped would come from it. But for me, that was such I knew I wanted to do it. And then the pandemic happened and I gave birth during the pandemic, and it was all much more difficult than I had anticipated. And I could have just said, nah, I'm not going to do this anymore. But I did it. And that, is something that I was proud of. Whether or not I got the images that I wanted to is not really important, I think, as far as that one goes.
How did you end up with street photography? Did you have like affinity for it from the get-go, or did you like fall into it? And if so, how and why?
I've always been really into people watching, and I think it was just kind of inherent that I take pictures of what I see, and I'm often in the streets. I've lived in cities pretty much my whole life with a couple stints in the suburbs. So it's not like a deliberate decision I made where I was like, oh, I'm going to get into street photography. It just kind of happened naturally. I look back at pictures I took like in high school when I would take trips places, and they're essentially street photography without even realizing it. So I can't tell you that it was like I was inspired and went for it. It kind of just happened. So,
okay.
Not an interesting answer. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, no, it's like perfectly fine. I think we all kind of like evolve and fall into our interests. Like I dabbled in like different kinds of photography. I even did like fashion at some point. It was like super fun. But regarding like photography in places, I think many people, especially thanks to Instagram, start with, you know, like typical like travel stuff. By which absolutely. I mean just photographing, you know, buildings. And I lived in Amsterdam, so like canals and canal houses all the way. Yeah. And then at one point, I mean, I do know some people who got big doing it, so they kept doing it. But for me personally, I also know like a lot of people who kind of like grew out of it because eventually you just want to take photos of something else.
Yeah, I think there's like, everyone has their own viewpoint, and when you start taking 1,000 pictures of a canal and it looks like somebody else's picture of a canal, you know, you have that moment where you're like, well, this one's mine, and you love it, but then you want to say, well, what can I do differently about this? What do I see different about this? And I think that leads to street photography or documentary photography pretty easily.
Are people who are taking part in your 52 weeks challenge street photographers, or do you see other types of work?
Oh, you see everything. I would say it's probably street photography would be the minority. You see a lot of macro, which is fun because I don't do macro at all.
Okay.
Yeah, so that one's fun. I often see a lot of like toy photography, macro toy photography. And then there's a lot of beginners who are just exploring everything. So they'll do portraits one week, you know, florals, or, you know, and they'll try a little bit of everything to figure out what they like sparks with them. So yeah, it's a pretty diverse group, which is, I think, the best thing about it. Because otherwise you end up in your little club, and you don't
end up in a bubble else. And then you don't even like evolve, because if you're stuck in a bubble with people at your own level, you're never exposed to anything else, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the first time you organized a 52 weeks challenge, it was also like a very good timing, because there was another 52 weeks challenge that ran for a couple of years and then it stopped. I think it was like dogwood photography from somewhere.
Dogwood, I didn't know it stopped, to be honest.
No, it was literally so the first time I realized that you were doing a challenge, I actually wanted to join the dogwood challenge, and it wasn't there. So
well, that's the timing for me then.
The fact that your challenge like worked and attracted people just means that people want something like that. And there are not many like photo challenges out there, you know. For Photo 365, you can just start it whenever you want, but if you want like structure or anything, what has changed since your like first challenge? I mean, you said that the first one was maybe like a bit less organized and like it was fun and stuff, but like otherwise, do you think you've learned something from organizing the challenges, and what is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one wasn't structured at all. It was more like, okay, what should the prompt be this week? I would sit on the couch with my husband and be like, oh, what should it be this week? It was this last week. Did I do that like before? You know, and it was just kind of free form because I didn't really expect it to be anything. It was more just like my own thing that a few people were kind of following along and doing as well. But I got really good feedback at the end from somebody who did the whole thing, and he was like, it was really great, but there were some things like sometimes you didn't post one, and it was like, I joined this because I wanted to see what you would do, and then he was like, you know, sometimes you wouldn't post it until Wednesday, but I expected it on Monday, and some of the prompts are really hard and I needed more than a week to think about.
Oh wow.
So all of that, I took all of that and I was like, okay, so how do I change this? So I wrote the whole schedule for the year, and posted it. This is week 1, this is week 2, this is week 3, for the second year. And that way people were able to see it, so that they could brainstorm for weeks out if they needed to, and B, in case I dropped the ball for any reason. And I wasn't able to like put up the announcement post. They still had access to it elsewhere, and they knew what it was. But then the prompts themselves, I shifted quite a bit as well. I instead of just whatever comes to my head, I organize them in a way that they built off of one another. So if you're a straight beginner, you're learning like a pretty straight task, and then you're going to be able to, okay, well, now I know how shutter speed works. So because I was supposed to show motion. So, okay, what can I do to stop motion? Oh, the other, things like that. And then I included quarterly, I included photographer spotlights, because one thing I find is that a lot of new photographers don't know any photographers. Maybe they know Instagram photographers or YouTube photographers.
That's what we're exposed to, yeah.
Exactly. And it's not their fault. I don't, so I wanted to be able to say, well, have you heard of Henri Cartier-Bresson? Or, have you met Ted? Yeah. So I did that, and I included some photographers that I really liked. And I wanted to not just, here's a white man. So I put in, I made sure that there was women as well, and people from different countries and different ethnic backgrounds, because I thought that was important, because their voice is so different. So I took a lot of thought into that. And this year with that, I did one different thing. For the last photographer spotlight, I asked them to find somebody that they're inspired by, because I found that my inspiration is maybe a little heavy-handed on documentary and street type photographers and certain kinds of portrait photographers. And I wanted people to be able to explore and say, well, I really like this person that you have never even mentioned. So yeah. I thought that was important. So I made those big changes, and I made it so you have to set a goal, and then we check back at the goal halfway through, and then we check back at the goal at the end as well. So it's much more structured.
That sounds like a very good like photography education.
I hope so.
But just to make it clear, you're doing this for free. People are not paying to participate, right?
No, it's free.
But what's in it for you? I have to be like
that's a great
capitalist
question.
Here.
What is in it for me? Well, I'm not a capitalist, so that helps. No, I really enjoy the community over the competition. And you said that earlier, and that phrase is so important to me. I'm not rich. I can't, I really can't afford to be doing this for free. But to me, it's important that people have a place that they can talk about their photography in a judgment-free zone, because the internet is just such a wash of negativity, and I'm better than you, and I'm going to tell you why I'm better than you. And I hate that more than anything.
That's like every other online course about anything.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's so backwards. And I like people learning. I like to teach people, and I like to learn as they're learning. So I don't see myself as the end all be all knowledge portal. I see it as like a give and take. So, by having all these other people involved, it also keeps me on the ball and keeps me doing it, because otherwise I would just sit on the couch with my cat. So I think it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of work, but I think there's some benefits to it in my personal photography, and also in trying to help the community, which is something I believe in. So corny. I'm going to take a drink.
Virtual beer.
So yeah, as we were getting ready for the show, we talked about the concept of community over competition, and how that used to be what Instagram was about, and now it's like anything but. You're also very active in the photography community on the internet. I always see you on the photography subreddit, for example, which like for me has always been very intimidating, to be honest. What's your experience been like being a photographer on the internet?
Yeah, that's such a loaded question. Well, so I moderate our photography and our photographs.
Really?
I do.
Okay, I just thought you were like a very active
user. 3 years now. So I was super intimidated by it as well. I'm like 11, I think today or tomorrow is my 11-year cake day, which is so nerdy to say out loud. Yeah, and I was super intimidated by art photography forever. But they had these community threads once a week where you could just like say whatever. And I started posting in there when I started to feel a little bit confident with my life. And I was getting good feedback and also, constructive feedback, which was super helpful and not at all intimidating. People were just kind of welcoming, and I actually made some pretty, I would call them friends, good friends from that really small, tiny subset of our photography. And then they had said something about, there was one of those massive blow up posts where it's like, well, this subreddit is terrible. And somebody was like, well, we all live in America. What are we supposed to do? There's all this time. And I was like, well, I live in Europe. I can help. And they said, yeah, you come help. So that's when I started moderating.
Oh, so the time difference.
Yeah. It was a time thing.
Play the part. All right.
Yeah, exactly. So I was the European moderator for a while, just me. But for me, the thing that happened there was the community threads went away. It was so gear centric, and I can swear this, right? I don't give a shit about gear. So, I was not interested. So when I got on the team,
gear
I was like,
helps.
Yes,
let's not pretend it doesn't.
No, we won't get into that right now. Yeah. I don't not give a shit. I give very few shits about it. Let's say it like that. I don't like talking about it that much is all. Yeah, so I was, when I got on the moderator team, I was like, guys, it was really good before. We had this community threads every week. Those were great. And then I also had started, before I was a mod, I started the print swap thing where people would send prints to each other via the subreddit. And that was, again, something that was way too much work to not be paid for, which just seems to be a running theme in my life. But yeah, so my whole goal was to try to get the community back because I felt like it was so instrumental for me getting better at what I was doing. And so I got the community threads back. And I'm not going to say I single-handedly did all this stuff. Obviously, it's a team and they work really hard as well. So we worked together to try to, it's not perfect. It's still not there. There's a lot of negativity in Reddit in general, which everybody knows. So I try my best not to add to that and to take some of that away. So I try to show up in the community threads and be welcoming to people who are new or, maybe are a little intimidated, because I was forever for probably 6 years before I dove in. That's a pretty long-winded way of saying, I think that the community is important, and it's a work in progress. It's definitely a work in progress, but there's potential there for you to find good communities in these otherwise toxic environments. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be the case. It should be the other way around, but that's not the reality.
This sounds like a good life lesson. You can find good people in shitty places. Apart from Reddit, you are active in a lot of places. And what's your favorite? If you're a photographer who wants to find community online apart from our photography, where should you I've been struggling with this question myself, honestly, because for years I've only been on Instagram, and I'm not really sure where's it going. I still like it, but the sheer amount of different formats and specs is bewildering, and it really requires you to approach it as a job almost, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But then I tried getting on Flickr, and then it seems like nobody's there, even though many people online talk about it. Then I try to go to, I've had a 500px profile since 2009. But I'm not really active there, and I feel the engagement is there, but then I'm not sure the community is there. It's a mess. What?
It's a total mess.
Yeah,
it's a total mess. I've been on Flickr since 2004. because like I said, my parents were photographers. So my mom got us all pro accounts when I was a teenager.
That's amazing.
So yeah. So I've had a pro account since 2004 on Flickr. And I think like back in the day, it was a better community, but it also skews in a very specific kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Demographic. It's, I think that you can find the communities if you try hard enough, but the general overwhelming community there is maybe a little less contemporary. I'm trying to be really diplomatic here.
Even though I think if you're into like something very niche, like a particular film stock, if you're into film photography, for example, like that's amazing because like the smaller communities there are like very, very niche. So my favorite film stock is Kodak Ektar, and there's a group for it on Flickr, which is like the only place I know of online where you can go and like post, just the photos taken with that film and talk about it.
I love that about it. Yeah, that's the best thing. And like if you're looking at a new lens, you can go and search pictures just by that lens and stuff. And that's really super helpful. The discussion just isn't there. Like I have a 52 weeks group on Flickr, and I stopped posting the like discussion after like week 30 because nobody said anything.
Wow.
So they posted the pictures, and then they would discuss on Reddit, or they would discuss on Facebook or somewhere else. So I just stopped doing that. So you could
argue that people on Flickr who do want to engage in a discourse are also somewhere else.
Yeah, I would argue that.
Yeah.
And I think like 500, I don't know if we say PX or PIX, but I feel like them, for me, I feel like the engagement is disingenuous because you post a picture and like 20 seconds later, they're like, "Oh, you rising. Oh, this is like the number one picture
honestly,
right now."
I think it's. I don't think it's not like genuine. I think there is an algorithm there, basically, that works better than the Instagram algorithm, because like within hours of posting it, you can be like, oh, your photo is popular or something, and then you're suddenly on the front page and stuff. Like if Instagram's algorithm worked like that, I definitely wouldn't mind. But there's also like a particular type of photos that performs well on 500
Not mine.
PX. Usually if it's like HDR landscape or boobs.
I mean, I think that the best communities are always going to be the local ones. Like I started a street photography collective in Prague, and we not now obviously, but we would have meetings like once a month and photo walks and things like that. I think you're always going to get the most meaningful feedback and community from people who are with you the whole time. Like they know what your goals are, they know what you want to do, and the anonymity of the internet is just obviously going to bring out the worst in people. So
I've had like several experiences with local photo clubs, and I don't know, I can't take it seriously if it's comprised of people still thinking that selective desaturation is a good thing.
Well, this is why I made my own club.
Oh, that's the catch. All right. Good to know. That might be one of my post-lockdown projects then. But speaking of being on the internet as a photographer and like finding community, several years ago, but because like we've been following each other on Instagram for a very long time, both of us went through a period when we like blocked half, if not 2/3 of our followers on Instagram, and many people thought we were crazy. So
I did, I still get emails about that asking why I did that.
Really?
Like 2 days ago, I got a message and somebody was like, I saw your work like 2 years ago and you had 14,000 followers and now you have 4,000. What went wrong? And I was like, nah.
Yeah, really.
Get into this?
What went wrong? What was your like? I think we had like similar motivation, but I've never talked about mine. So let's talk about that. Personally, I did it. There were like several factors. I used Instagram as an extension of my portfolio back in the day, and I did a lot of lifestyle portraits and couples, and I mean also a lot of touristy things that I don't really care about doing anymore. And at one point I had a gay engagement And I was really happy with the photos, and I shared them. And then I ended up having to delete hate comments. Like, and most of those people were my followers, and I'm like, I'm gay myself. How have you not like picked it up? That's how it started. And then I realized I had a lot of fake followers, or even like people who followed you, you know, like back in 2012, and then like stopped using it. And I'm like, okay, you're probably not gonna, or you're probably, you know, making a new Instagram account if you do decide to come back. So yeah, and then I just started blocking people and like removing them and stuff. And I was like 10 point something, and I went to like 6.3, which is roughly where I'm at right now. I do regret having lost the swipe up function in my stories.
That's it. Yeah.
Because as a person who makes a lot of different things online, I do want to share it with my followers, and I think that like the link in bio concept is kind of stupid. So those were my reasons. What were yours?
Very similar. So I started on Instagram in like 2010, 2011, like when they were brand new, and I was living in Germany at the time. So it was just kind of like nonsense iPhone snaps. And then I moved back to America, and it was again like nonsense. It was more like Facebook for me at the time. And then when I started like doing things more seriously around 2016, that's when I started gaining all those followers. I got a whole bunch after one picture that I took, which is actually hanging on my wall over there, of Paris. That kind of blew up on Reddit, and then blew up everywhere else. And I'm still having to like get lawyers for it. It's just one photo. What? It's like, because people are constantly stealing it. So that's where the explosion started. And then I got up to like 14, and I was still traveling full time with my husband at the time. And I started to notice that it was like really weighing on my mental health. Like I would be upset if I didn't post something that day, and I was like, oh no, I need to post a picture. Oh, I need to make sure I'm using the right hashtags. And I was getting creepy PMs all the time. And like, I mean, I'm a woman on the internet. It's inevitable anyway, but it was almost like asking for more of them. And then also getting like we have leggings. Can we send you leggings? And then it's like, I don't know who they thought I was. I was like, do you see one photo of me on my entire Instagram feed? No. So no, I don't want your leggings. And then, so after that, I took like a break, and I didn't post anything for like 2 months, 3 months. And when I came back, this was right around when you did it, I went through my followers, and a lot of them were like nail salons in the Ukraine and car dealerships in Bulgaria, because I spent like a month in these places. And I was like,
that's amazing.
I was like, I'm not going to get my nails done in Ukraine anytime soon. I'm not, I'm not buying a car in Bulgaria. So I started going through and getting rid of those first.
I mean, you never know.
You never know. I mean, I do spend time over there. It's fair. But yeah, so I went through and I got rid of those first. And then I started getting rid of like the dead accounts. And then I went through and I was like, okay, these people are obviously anyone that I didn't like recognize right away, or couldn't like tap on and see, oh, okay, that's a photographer. Or okay, that's somebody that lives in, back in New York or whatever. I kind of just was like, get out of my life. So I went from 14 to like 2,300.
So really you've grown, like you've doubled since, right?
I have, I don't know. I think I'm at like 4,000 something right now. So the 52 weeks project helped with that, regrowing it. But yeah, Jan, like 2 weeks ago, I decided I wasn't even going to use hashtags anymore. I'm so over it. Yeah, I know. Oh, blasphemy.
Oh, no.
I'm only using my own hashtags now and like locations. I just decided that it's not worth the hustle for me. I'm not interested in that anymore. So that's where we are. I do miss the swipe up, just like you do, because that would be nice. I think it's really. Plus, so many people have fake 10,000 and they get the swipe up.
It's almost as if they're encouraging you to buy fake followers, which is ridiculous, because it does like bring your engagement down and stuff. But like if you want to swipe up, then Oh, that's weird.
But there we are.
Where do you think Instagram's going? And do you think anything will like replace it? I was very enthusiastic about Vero, and then it like flopped. Even though I do follow a couple of people who are still actively using it.
It's such a fickle thing because I'm old now. I'm in my mid-30s, and like
That's
I don't
old.
understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm super old now. I don't. Really
I mean, I don't understand TikTok. Yes.
So there we are.
Even though I do
mean,
understand it, but I do think
I understand it, but I don't understand
it would require a lot of like focus and dedication.
Yeah.
And I think if you're a photographer on TikTok, what everybody seems to do are like photo hacks, like, you know, things you can fit in like a 15-second video.
Seconds,
and then there's only so many videos I can see about shove your iPhone in front of your lens to create a reflection. I mean, I do it, but I don't want to broadcast it.
You don't need to tell everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, like, maybe it's a little get off my lawn, but like I went to film school and I'm super bitter that I had to learn on these like chunky machines and chunky cameras and spend hours in the editing bay and all this stuff, and they can just do it in like 5 seconds on TikTok. I'm super bitter.
It's not the same level. It's not the same level.
Yeah,
like it all depends what you.
Was in film school.
Okay. No, but I think it all depends on like who's your audience and like what do people expect. True. If you see like an Instagram reel or a TikTok video, you don't really expect that good of a production quality. Like,
I guess that's fair.
Same goes for Vine. Rest in peace.
Oh, Vine,
even though there were a couple of people there who were really doing, I wouldn't call them like advanced edits, but like very thoughtful edits with very deliberate camera placement and stuff. So there was some like craft there. Yeah. But for a TikTok video, like, let's be honest, it's usually one take with a lot of jump cuts. And
exactly. Yeah, it's weird. I don't have the attention span for it. I don't watch YouTube videos or TikTok. It's odd to say you don't have the attention span for something that's 15
super
seconds
short.
long.
Yeah.
But like maybe I'm just really old school, but I'd rather sit down and like watch television. I'm so aging myself. But
interesting.
I mean,
but I think I treat YouTube as television, really. Because I watch it on my Apple TV hooked up to a big TV in my living room.
Yeah, me too. But I don't.
And it's I don't know. It's like because what I follow are mostly like cooking channels and or like very niche like photography channels, and I literally treat it as Netflix.
Sure,
just
no,
the content is different.
I get it. I just don't get it. Like my husband's the same way. Like he watches YouTube like normal, like a normal person, but like I just don't. And I don't know like any of the YouTubers that like the photography online community talks about. Like they throw out names and like everyone's, especially the analog community. Yeah. So I am
because I think it's smaller. Film. It's smaller, and then.
Yeah, I shoot film. I love shooting film. I have no idea what these people on our analog circle here are talking about half the time. I have no idea. There's like one guy they always talk about, and I was like,
who are they talking about, really?
I don't know. Some guy with like a beanie, and he always carries it around his neck. Maybe he shoots Leica. I don't know his name, but there's always
that sounds like all of them. That sounds like all of them.
He shoots Leica with a red beanie on his head.
I like I forgot what's his name. I like Grainy Days. He looks like, and I'm gonna quote somebody else on YouTube. He looks like a depressed Walmart Ryan Gosling.
Maybe
but
that's him.
The style of his videos is really, really fun because it's like very. I wouldn't like call it edgy, but like there's like one joke every 2 sentences, and they're all like kind of dark and stuff. And I like his work, so it's fun usually. But I
just don't have the attention span to find the people I like, I guess is what it is.
You're actually in a really good place to start a YouTube channel, because whenever like a more recent successful YouTuber gives an interview, they're always like, yeah, I didn't even watch YouTube. I didn't know what a vlog was. I just wanted to share things. So theoretically, I think you're in a good place because you don't have any point of reference.
No, that's fair. Yeah. I mean, I don't. Yeah. I have been told to do it, and I don't know. I'm like the worst film school graduate in the universe because like I worked in TV for like 10 years and I worked in film, and now I don't even like to make videos for myself anymore. I don't, not even like, when I'm traveling around, I never take video. So I don't know what that is. Maybe it's like old, bitter film school kid nonsense or something.
Or you just haven't found something that will make you like passionate enough.
Yeah. Or I'm just really lazy. That might be it.
That.
Yeah, that might be it.
I mean, I don't know. I always thought I'd be making documentaries, and here I am drinking with people on video chat. So
virtualbeerpodcast.com.
You've also organized workshops that were like live in Prague, and then you moved them online when the lockdown began.
Right.
How did that go? Like the transition from sitting in a room with people to not. How did that work out?
It was motivated on a couple of things. First, I like giving workshops, but also like you, I did a lot of tourist travel photos. So people would come to Prague and I take pictures of them. And now I couldn't have that because there are no tourists. So it was another way to kind of get some of my income back. But it was actually, I think the most challenging thing is that my in-person workshops are very hands-on, and we're usually out in the field, and, trying to translate that into a virtual setting was a little tricky, and it took a little bit of trial and error. But I included, little hands-on practices halfway through that we would come back and talk about. And the benefit of this kind of like a Zoom workshop is that we were getting people from all over. So I'd have people in Australia and Europe and America all in the same workshop. So the frame of references were so different that they would bounce off of each other really well, and we can learn from each other, as opposed to everyone, being from the same place. And my workshops tend to be very discussion based anyway. So I like to have a chat as opposed to just me talking at people. So that was a really good forum for that, because the people that wanted to talk could do so. And the people that wanted to kind of sit back and be more quiet, they're able to do that without anyone really even noticing. And the groups are really small. I don't take more than 10 people in a workshop, so that it is able to
even though they're online, and you could theoretically.
I could, yeah. But I like this goes back to the community thing. I like the being able to talk to each other. And if you have more than 10 people, it starts to get really frantic, and then you can't really, it would be me, instead of me facilitating a conversation, it would be me talking at people and lecturing. So it's the difference between like in college being in a seminar and being in a lecture hall. And I don't want to be in a lecture hall. I'm not a professor, specifically. So I use what we call the Socratic method, which is, asking questions to elicit answers and elicit more questions. And I think that's one of the best ways to learn. I think the thing is, there's so many different types of learning styles, and I'm going to get into my teaching background. There's so many different types of learning styles, but I feel like the Socratic method is a way that you can help everybody to get there, even if the person is a visual learner versus a kinesthetic, like touching, has to do something. By asking questions and eliciting a conversation, it helps everybody to get something out of what's happening. So yeah, I have these small groups. I'm doing a couple more. I haven't done them since August. Yeah, I think August was the last ones, because I had my son and he, did some other stuff. But I opened up some other ones this month. So I'm actually really excited to get back into them and do them again more regularly, because they're a lot of fun.
So how regularly are we talking about?
Right now I have one a week starting next week. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And how can people sign up for them?
So they can right through my website, clondon.me/learn, or just clondon.me, and there's a big learn button at the top. You'll find all the information about the different topics. There's 4 different topics, and then you'll see a calendar. I try to do the times at times that are convenient for the most amount of people, because I'm in Europe.
Is there such a time?
No, there isn't. But as I'm in Europe, and a lot of my followers and so on are in America, I tend to do them later in the day for me, so it's the middle of the day for them. I try as best I can.
And what are the topics you cover?
Yeah, there's 4 different ones. There's visual storytelling, which focuses a lot on street and documentary, but also ethics of photography, as well as how to tell a story through an image through things like mise en scène and other nonsense film school things that I pull out. And then there's Seeing Like a Photographer, which is a bit more of like an overview. So we talk a little bit about color, we talk a little bit about composition, we talk a little bit about storytelling. Then there is compositional guidelines, which I have a blog post about compositional guidelines that a lot of people have read, but this kind of goes past that and talks about some of the lesser known ones. So we don't really talk about rule of thirds, we'll talk about rule of odds or, things like that. And when it's appropriate to use these guidelines and when it's better to ignore them. And then there's color theory, which is my favorite thing on the planet. So if you like to listen to people ramble about color for 2 hours, you know where to go. So that's what
I do.
Is.
So
yeah, there you go.
I might drop by. I have a stupid sidebar question. How much do you struggle with SEO having the name that you have?
A lot.
I mean, you made a name for yourself in the meantime, but I still get a map of London. So
yeah, it's funny too because my last name is Phillips. London is my middle name. If you search my full name, you used to get Sean Wright Phillips because he played for Chelsea Football Club. So that was fun for a while. It's getting better. It's actually, the one thing that I think is really funny is I often get tagged in Cipriani London posts. Cipriani's a restaurant chain. They're in New York and there's in London as well. And their one in London they call Sea London. So that's fun because people will tag me in the food. And they're like, oh, I had this wonderful night out at Sea London. And I'm like, no, you didn't. I was watching Parks and Rec.
So
I don't know what you were doing.
People would go to your tag posts on Instagram and think you're a really good cook.
Exactly.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you were there first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they should change the name, not you.
That's right. That's a battle I don't want to get into.
All right. And apart from sealondon.me, where can people also find you on the internets?
I'm Sea London everywhere. So Instagram is Sea London, Reddit is Sea London, Facebook is Sea London Photography, I think. Venmo, no, I'm just kidding.
PayPal,
PayPal, no. You can find me at Sea London. And if you want to send, email is Chelsea@SeaLondon.me. I'm pretty easy to find on the internet, which is terrifying.
Which is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, exactly.
But then people who you definitely don't want to find you won't because they're usually too stupid.
They'll find Sean Wright Phillips instead. Yeah. So it works out.
While I was living in Serbia, they were switching between the military's mandatory for everyone, and it's not, but you should do community service and blah blah. However, when I was coming of age, it was mandatory, and I was supposed to go and register, and I never did that. And they've been looking for me at wrong addresses for years. Whereas if they just Googled, and I'm not keeping a low profile, I hosted a show on a national radio station. You can Google my name and find me immediately. They never did. So
I don't know how to feel about Serbian government looking for me.
I mean, they're probably not. There are more important people out there, but
that's true. It is Serbia.
Yeah. Every once in a while, my mother would text me, "Hey, you got another letter from the military," and okay, yeah, they could have Googled. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Virtual Beer. I hope you had fun.
Thanks for having me. I did.
Do you have any particular goal that you're personally striving for this year? Yeesh. It can be professional. It can be photography. You could just say, I'm trying to finish my 52-week challenge. No.
Yeah, there we go. I'd like to actually finish it. I'd like to not make goals. That's right. I'd like to be less type A about things. That's my goal. I
think my only goal is to post weekly on YouTube. I mean, you're not going to watch. But
no, I won't. But somebody will. Maybe my husband will watch it. There you go.
Yeah, precisely. All right. Well, thanks for joining me once again.
Thank you.
And if you like this, so you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, or like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the relevant links will be in the description, aka show notes, if you're in your podcast player right now. See you.